Today we're going to pinpoint the precise political ideology of every character in the hit 2000 series, Transformers Animated. I'm joined by my good friend Alex, who knows about politics, as well as Jim Sorensen, the co-author of the Transformers Animated Allspark Almanac 1, Allspark Almanac 2, Allspark Almanac Addendum, and the complete Allspark Almanac.
You forgot about the Allspark Almanac Apocrypha.
That's true. Now available in Bumble Prime, the comic. I've brought both of you here because I feel like we could have a spirited discussion that no one else has ever been brave enough to have. Also, Jim, I realize I think this is your first time on my YouTube channel, but it has nothing to do with your extensive history of official Transformers authorship. It's just this bullshit.
Yeah, no, I love this bullshit.
We're gonna be doing the Toy Maker and the Bots rules, where it's only characters who have been to Earth. Aliens from outer space who have never been to the planet are not allowed to vote in the human elections. But aliens from outer space who have been to the planet are. Paperplane's editing this, which means we can be as long and incoherent as we want, because I won't have to suffer with the edit. It'll be him. We have to establish a baseline of the show's kind of power structures, and for that, maybe we should start with Ultra Magnus. I think Ultra Magnus might be the easiest to pin down because he's kind of an established likeness of an existing politician in real life. On May 1st, 2003, George Bush gave his infamous Mission Accomplished speech to announce that major combat operations in Iraq had ended after 6 weeks. Of course, this aged poorly, and it took a subsequent 8 years to withdraw US forces from Iraq. The phrase mission accomplished is often used in pop culture as a mockery of premature declarations of victory. The third episode of Transformers Animated second season was titled Mission Accomplished, and in it, a fairly overt line is drawn between Ultra Magnus and George Bush, with Magnus insisting throughout the episode that the Decepticons are vanquished and the Autobots' work on Earth is done, only for him to be completely caught off guard by Starscream's ambush at the end of the story. Throughout the series, Ultra Magnus has dialogue about weapons of mass destruction, which is another Bushism. So I think that Ultra Magnus is probably in a similar camp as George Bush politically.
I would say he's neoconservative, from the 2000s, definitely very much. I pretty much messaged you saying that because it was pretty much the easiest one to pin down.
Yeah.
I would peg Ultra Magnus as a classical conservative. I think he values tradition. I think he values social stability. I do have a character that I have pegged as a neocon, and we'll get to that. I wanted to sort of stratify the entire group and not have any duplicates. It's fine if you guys want to say he's a neocon. I certainly, these things are not rigid buckets. They're not mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. But that was one of the reasons why I came up with classical conservatism for him, because I wanted to have 30 or so different schools of thought.
When he made Omega Supreme, that was a huge tradition break for Ultra Magnus, but he didn't take it lightly. I do see what you're saying.
Jim, do you concede that he may not be classical given his creation of Omega Supreme, a doomsday weapon?
Oh no, I think classical conservatives are, classically speaking, more than happy to create massive weapons.
I think he compromised on his beliefs there, because I don't think he really wanted to necessarily build something like that. That was just something that it was a last resort sort of thing. Mm-hmm. That he felt like he had to do.
I think we could peg Magnus as a classical conservative. I think Jim made his case. Another part of this video, we want to figure out who every character in Transformers Animated might have voted for in the 2008 presidential election. When Transformers Animated was airing, this was the hot event happening in the country. Barack Obama versus John McCain, as you can see on the back of Transformers The Arrival issue 3. I think Ultra Magnus would probably vote for John McCain.
I would concur.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer, I think.
Megatron. Let's flip to the Decepticon side of the coin. We need to figure out what Decepticonism represents in Transformers Animated, because like many Transformers shows, the specific ideology of the Decepticons is left kind of vague, as opposed to, say, IDW or TF1. When Marty Eisenberg was kind of coming up with the premise of the series of Transformers Animated, he looked back at the original show, which was really inspired by the Cold War, two warring empires at the height of their power. And so he looked at the modern conflicts of the 21st century for his inspiration, which was the War on Terror. And Marty Eisenberg reinvented Decepticons as the losers of the last war, self-proclaimed freedom fighters who hide in plain sight. And throughout the series, there is kind of a line drawn between Megatron and Osama bin Laden. Marty once pointed out to me that in season 2, the Decepticons are literally hiding in caves. So I think that Osama bin Laden is almost like the template for Megatron. But how do you pin Osama bin Laden on like a right-left spectrum? Because I feel like that's so inherently Western as a framing device.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Osama bin Laden is largely motivated by religion and sort of post-colonialism. And that doesn't neatly fit into a left-right framework. But I don't think we're constrained to a left-right political or economic framework. I think economics is an interesting one because Transformers spends so little time concerning itself with the means of production outside of some outliers, the IDW comics. But Transformers Animated hardly gets into that sort of thing at all.
There's kind of like, you're seeing very like two different types of conservatism. So like we have like the Western, the Western conservatism, and then like there's conservatism in other parts of the world that operate very differently, but they sort of have like a very similar sort of thought process that leads to like a lot of like maybe sort of like prejudiced views.
In his messages, bin Laden opposed pan-Arabism, socialism, communism, democracy, and other doctrines. So he was very staunchly not socialist and not communist, which are very left.
Communism was kind of used to associate with the Decepticons and some other Transformer stories, like sort of like an IDW. With the Megatron uprising, they sort of try to equate that to like some sort of like communist revolution, I think. But here in Transformers Animated, you don't really see that much, if at all.
If anything, I would say in the context of most Transformers stories, Decepticons tend to be very individualist in nature, and Autobots tend to be a little bit more collectivist. That isn't absolute, and Transformers Animated doesn't especially lean into that as much as some other versions of it. But I think there are threads of that probably remain. Probably not that Marty injected specifically, but that were sort of left over from things like the movie and movie singular at the time, and Armada Energon Cybertron and G1.
I think Out of Boot Camp is like the most educational episode when it comes to telling you how the politics in animated works. That's probably like the most detailed they've gotten into it, probably until This Is Why I Hate Machines, where you see more of it. Mm-hmm. But this is like, more in like the Ultra Magnus era, pre-Sentinel era Cybertron, where there's like the bots, they're kind of born, and it's very heavily implied they're just born without names at all. So like they're just named there by their boot camp sergeant.
How are we pegging down Megatron? Like, where does he fall on any spectrum?
I think he's a classical Greek tyrant in that sense. I like philosophically, he very much believes in the power of a single individual as long as it's him, and that would tie into the classic G1 Megatron motto, peace through tyranny. I think elements of that remain in that archetype that Megatron in Animated is still tapping into.
I think on a fundamental level, Megatron would not participate in the election because I don't think he really believes in democracy.
He would blow up the White House.
Right out of the gate, the Overton window of the world of Animated is kind of shifted to the right, just based on the leader of the Autobots and the leader of the Decepticons, which is kind of interesting.
There are interesting parallels between Ultra Magnus and Sentinel Prime, heir apparent, and Megatron in terms of their ideologies. In some ways, they're not that different. And there's a sort of like a racial essentialism. That's I feel a little dirty saying that, but the Autobots and Decepticons really do seem to have some biological, cyber biological differences that Megatron leans into, and not necessarily because he philosophically believes in it, but because it's useful and it's easy, to point to.
You can see like differences between the majority of Autobots and Decepticons, but then there's characters like Swindle. Swindle is apparently like he's a former Autobot, and he's like smaller than all the other Decepticons. He's like pretty distinctly different. So it's just like I wonder like how Megatron views, like I guess he just makes certain exceptions based on certain things because Megatron like has no issues like working with him and stuff like that.
I know Derek took great pains to make Swindle have himself look bigger than he actually is. Like he has lifts in his shoes and things. I think that's so fun to have Swindle try to fit in with his new Decepticon pals that he's more ideologically compatible with. And I don't know if this was public, but I remember Derek privately chatting that Swindle's Autobot power was his little transdimensional space. Everything else he bought and augmented, but that was the little Autobot power that he was protoformed with.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That makes sense.
I don't think Megatron believes in sort of, let's say, cyber biological essentialism because it's a little less gross. But I think he would use it when it was useful to him. But whereas I think probably Sentinel Prime would believe in it. Like if a Decepticon tried to defect, it would bother Sentinel Prime that they were enormous and that they had integrated weapons, which, might be part of what Sentinel's issue with Omega Supreme is. Is this guy is Decepticon-y.
Yeah. Whereas I think Megatron clearly is willing to work with Autobot defectees like Lockdown and Swindle.
That's crazy that we're making Megatron look more progressive than Sentinel right now.
Should we do Swindle now while we're here?
Yeah, let's do Swindle.
He would be an anarcho-capitalist.
That was the exact term that I wrote down for him. Anarcho-capitalism. I think he'd vote for McCain. I think he would prefer his positions on economic things, and he wouldn't care about any other issue.
I wanted to go next to Lockdown, who I would argue is pretty firmly apolitical, right down to the rub sign on his chest. I think he probably has intense opinions about the state of the galaxy, about the Autobots, about the Decepticons, but he just refuses to vote on principle.
It's whoever pays him more money.
I think he believes in the survival of the fittest, to the extent that he has a philosophy. Again, not one that he comes to from reading, but more based on his actions as we see them.
And I would say Lockdown probably doesn't vote. Now I want to go to Blurr. So there was a copy pasta shitpost which used to go around which said, I was thinking about why so many in the radical left participate in speed running. The reason is the left's lack of work ethic. Go fast rather than do it right. And in a Petersonian sense, to elevate alternate sexual archetypes in the marketplace. Fastest Autobot. Based solely on that shitpost, I'm gonna say that Blurr is a radical leftist, not taking his characterization or the text of the series itself into account.
I had him down as for dromocracy, which is the philosophy that the fastest is the best.
Is that a real philosophy?
That is a real philosophy, as articulated by Paul Virioli, who's a French.
Isn't that that's just Velocitron, like in Transformers, like how the government works?
Aren't there races to be the leader of that planet's government?
Yeah, exactly. A classical democracy.
In all seriousness, Blurr is engaged in surveillance throughout the second season, so clearly he is not opposed to the intense surveillance state in the name of freedom, both against allies and enemies. He's stalking Optimus's team and Megatron.
Okay, but let's be totally fair. That doesn't really narrow it down to Obama or McCain.
That's true. That's true.
If you're going to take the idea of democracy seriously, I would say Obama, in that Obama is objectively faster than McCain.
Next up, I wanted to jump to our first of the show's main characters, Prowl. In my opinion, Prowl is a liberal, and I think that he has 30 politically charged Instagram stories per day about climate change or ICE or whatever else is topical. I think that Prowl probably watches Jimmy Kimmel Live every night on cable, the whole episode as it airs, and he's very excited to do so. I think that his main cause of concern is climate change and environmental regulations and protections.
Yeah, this one's pretty easy. I think pretty much anything to the left of McCain.
He would definitely be a left-leaning character who would vote for Obama. In terms of his individual philosophy, I have him down as a Taoist, just the idea that all things have a soul or an essence.
Next up, I have Jetfire and Jetstorm. I think they're concerned about goofing around and just having fun. They work, in the elite guard's power structure, often executing the orders of a very corrupt bureaucrat, Sentinel Prime, and they don't seem to really care at all. So I think that they just don't care about the bigger picture, and they're apolitical, and neither of them vote.
I don't think they've had their political awakening yet. I think that might be in the cards for them at some point, but it wasn't something that was ever depicted on the show.
They were sort of groomed into that position, right? Because they were picked up in a vulnerable position, and then they upgraded them. They gave them all this cool stuff. They feel like they owe a debt to them in a way.
And I think probably no vote based on what we see of them in the show.
They might get dragged to the poll, but I don't think they'd feel strongly one way or the other. Why don't we say one vote McCain? We'll assume that it's either 0 or 2, and we'll just average them.
Okay, good idea. Next up is Blitzwing. And I think that all three of Blitzwing's personalities may have completely different philosophies.
For the icy one, I see him as a nationalist. And I don't mean that in a joking way. I think he very much believes in sort of the idea of Decepticons as a power group that holds territory. Whereas I think angry Blitzwing is more of a classical fascist. He very much believes that the state, as represented by Megatron and himself and other the Decepticon elite, should be controlling all aspects of society. And the random one I had down as an absurdist, who believes that the universe is irrational and meaningless.
I have another word for crazy Blitzwing. I like to call him the radical centrist.
So, okay, here's the tricky thing. Who Blitzwing votes for just depends on which face is in control when he's in the ballot box.
I think the nationalist one would be fine with McCain. I think Angry One would vote for McCain, but he would much rather vote to someone much further to the right. And I think Absurdist One would probably vote third party.
So 2/3
we
he
could call
most
it
likely does.
2/3 McCain and 1/3 other.
Now we can jump to Captain Fanzone. And I was kind of going back and forth on him. I would say he is probably moderate or independent. I think that he's very old-fashioned. He hates all the newfangled technology, and he thinks that the youth is declining, but also I think he really respects, like, human rights. Like, I could not imagine Captain Fanzone discriminating against anyone at the same time.
I would see him as leaning moderately to the right, but in the way that a 2008 person would, not like he seems like someone who would have jumped off the GOP bandwagon later. But in terms of philosophy, I have him down as a pragmatist. I think he likes to do what works. And I agree. I don't think he would be much for violating human rights.
I think after Bush, he might want to switch parties,
He might have gotten frustrated by Bush. I think by now, he would definitely be, like, not voting for Trump. But I think back in 2008, maybe he would vote for McCain. I think I could very much see that. But I could see it going either way.
I think overall, he would vote Obama. I think after Bush, he might want to switch parties,
I'm iffy on it, but I could see Fanzone doing Obama. Now we're going to do Grimlock, Swoop, and Snarl. I think that they're apolitical by nature, but they could be convinced to vote either Republican or Democrat if anyone persuasive enough comes by and plays to their fears.
I don't see them voting. I could imagine circumstances in which they would, but it's not something they would feel deeply about.
I have a vision, right? So I can imagine a super left-leaning politician that's anti-climate change coming in and doing the anti-fossil fuel thing, saying that they destroyed your kind. You have to follow us, right? The cars and trucks, they destroyed your kind and shit like that. Just like how Megatron did.
Yeah, that's what Prowl would say. That's how Prowl would radicalize the Dinobots. So I think it's very circumstantial. If someone convinced the Dinobots to vote, maybe they would. But most of the time, the Dinobots are just left to their own devices. And I think they are not going out of their way to vote. So I think we could probably say no vote on the Dinobots. Next, let's go to Bumblebee. I'm excited to talk about Bumblebee. I think that if we were to frame this more through a modern lens, I think that if anyone in the main cast may have voted for Donald Trump in the 2024 election, it may have been Bumblebee, because young men as a demographic really swung to the right. I think that Bumblebee probably spends his free time watching the Joe Rogan Experience and laughing at Steven Crowder videos saying, wow, he really owned those guys. Oh, my Bulkhead, come look at this. And I think Sari, if she ever saw him watching that, would be like, Bumblebee, those are grifters. And Bumblebee would either be apologetic or incredibly defensive and double down, depending on the episode.
He would double down at the beginning of the episode and he'd learned his lesson by the end. I mean, come on, you know how the episodes are structured.
I was telling Kian how I think what if Bumblebee was a climate change denier because of the way he was behaving in nature calls. He was because he wanted to pave down the whole forest and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's not gonna affect the Earth. There's so much of the Earth. Let's just pave down this one forest. No one's gonna notice.
I think he wants to be left alone. He doesn't want to be told what to do. I think he would probably describe himself as, socially liberal and fiscally conservative. He wants low taxes.
He does. Bumblebee also really loves poking Prowl's buttons just to troll him. And I think that if Bumblebee knows that Prowl is very left-leaning, he will adopt right-wing viewpoints just to annoy him.
He's going to put Prowl on the cringe compilation on his YouTube channel.
Yeah, he will. In 2008, Bumblebee does probably still go for Obama, but in 2024, he probably goes for Trump. What do you guys think? Because I think Bumblebee would just think John McCain is too old They'd be like, what is that, Ratchet?
Like he would like reflexively, do the opposite of what Prowl does. But then like there's also Sari, who he doesn't. I think like he respects to the point where like he doesn't want to like disappoint her.
Yeah, I think so too. Next up, Ratchet. I think that Ratchet is like the most progressive of the main cast. I think that he is like strangely progressive for an old person. I think he's like a military vet who just despises the current administration, the system that led to him fighting in the war in the first place. Like very like Beau of the Fifth Column, that kind of voice, that kind of influence. I think that he is the most likely of the main cast to be driven towards political extremism as well.
Yeah, I think he's like he gives me like the Bernie Sanders like Democrat vibe, where he would definitely like push for like Medicare for all, that kind of policy.
I think he wants to do what's going to work, and I think in the case of Obama versus McCain, I think Obama would be an easy choice.
Next is Starscream. I don't want to get political or anything, but I feel like
you don't want to get political.
I think that Starscream is like the average member of Donald Trump's cabinet who's just kind of scheming his way to the top and doing whatever he needs to do.
In 2008, I see him writing in his own name on the ballot.
Let's go to all of Starscream's clones.
The coward Starscream would probably be most motivated to vote by the rhetoric of fear. So he would probably be more drawn to McCain rather than sort of, the rhetoric of hope that Obama employs. Sunstorm, as an egoist, definitely would write, Starscream or his own name in. Who could say with Ramjet, right? The liar.
He votes for who he doesn't want to win. So I think Ramjet wants McCain to win, but he writes Obama. Slipstream, I don't know why, but I just feel like Slipstream would be woke.
So not writing Starscream's name in on the ballot?
No, I think Slipstream votes for maybe herself.
Well, that's almost the same thing.
Slipstream was a name that you guys and Hasbro came up with for the Almanac. Within the world of animated itself, does she consider her own name to be Starscream?
I think so.
Huh, that's actually a good point. So she would still write Starscream, but she would mean her. I think Slipstream's progressive, and she's like, fuck you, Starscream, I'm doing the opposite. Sunstorm is the sycophant, who's like, oh, you're so great! So who would he vote for? Who's he sucking up to?
Whoever's the same as the person in the voting booth next to him.
So probably Starscream, who would end up getting the vote, because he wants to, he wants to impress his original template. Waspinator. Wasp/Waspinator. And I think that Wasp will just simply have the opposite beliefs as Bumblebee. Why it doesn't matter what they are, Wasp will position himself as the polar opposite.
It's like that meme where it's like when someone you don't like has the same opinion and you don't want to agree.
For Wasp, I believe that he would be a stoic. I think he believes that the world is incredibly cruel and he has no choice but to put up with it, especially in the Waspinator phase.
Wasp, when he's Wasp, is probably a lot more politically engaged. By the time he's Waspinator, he's lost his mind. He doesn't really care. Waspinator is not voting, but Wasp is voting for McCain just to fuck with Bumblebee. Next, I'm so excited for this. Sentinel Prime. There's so much to say about him. In This Is Why I Hate Machines, Sentinel has assumed full control of the Autobot government, and he has put everything into an authoritarian crackdown, which is very explicitly inspired by McCarthyism. That was the angle that writer Rob Hoagie pitched for Marty Eisenberg. And that comparison is only introduced in episode 40 out of 42, so it's not like Sentinel is McCarthy the way Magnus is Bush. But it's still a very clear comparison. Right-wing radicalism was the base of support for McCarthy. And I also think that Sentinel, like Starscream, like Megatron, is doing whatever it takes to benefit him. Like Donald Trump in the 90s was a Democrat, but he eventually recognized that right-wing populism was his best path to accumulate power, and Sentinel kind of does the same thing. So he may not be far right in seasons 1 and 2, but by season 3, Sentinel's rhetoric is very far right, whether that's true to his beliefs or not. And I kind of feel like they are.
I think Sentinel is one of the more ideological characters in Transformers Animated, more so than someone like Megatron or Starscream, even though Megatron is happy to use it to his benefit. But I think what makes Sentinel sort of both pernicious and a little bit tragic is that he believes in most of what he's saying. Perhaps exaggerated a bit, but I think when Sentinel is talking about, there may be enemies among us, on some level he knows that this is something that will benefit him politically, but I think he believes it. I think this is something that he's actually motivated by. I had him down in my philosophical thing as the neo-cop. I think more so than Ultra Magnus, even though Ultra Magnus is more explicitly George Bush in the context of the show, the way he acts. I think Magnus is more motivated by tradition, whereas Sentinel, I think, is more motivated by fear and the belief that if his programs aren't enacted, bad things will happen.
Yeah, but and like the fear is genuine. Like when you see in real life, it's dishonest. It could be dishonest, like from a lot of these, people that try to fearmonger in their rhetoric. They have like a certain goal when they try to do it. But Sentinel, you can tell that it's really genuine because you can see like his experiences in the past with organics and all that.
He is like disgusted by humans. He is so like genuinely xenophobic to his core. It's not just rhetoric. Like he believes it. Easy McCain vote from Sentinel Prime. I think so. Next is Porter C. Powell.
I had him down as a neoliberalism. I think that's the sort of that sort of Reagan era belief that we want free markets, but we also want the government to kind of prop up our friends. He, as someone who's friends with powerful people, he's often propped up by the state. So I don't actually see him as libertarian because he very much knows how powerful the state's largesse can be to people like him.
That's interesting. I had not considered him as a neoliberal.
No, that's true because in the show he does he has a relationship with the mayor of Detroit.
Mm-hmm. A frequently fraught relationship, but a relationship nonetheless. I would say, regardless of what he is, he's a McCain vote.
He's voting for McCain.
Yeah,
he's voting for McCain. He's donating to McCain. He's shaking hands with McCain. He's got a picture with McCain.
When you bring up something like anarcho-capitalism versus regular capitalism regulated by the state, he definitely would prefer, state-regulated capitalism. I think he prefers the stability of that and how he can manipulate that more over like the chaos of something like anarcho-capitalism, for example.
Yeah, whereas Swindle's going to thrive on this. Swindle likes being in the trenches, literally and figuratively.
Are we the first people to discuss Porter C. Powell's in-depth political beliefs?
Yes.
Next is Isaac Sumdac. So it's interesting because Isaac Sumdac was written as a character during a time before the tech billionaire archetype was inherently seen as villainous and conniving. Because I think real-world figures like Zuckerberg and Musk kind of influenced fiction as a whole, and now you wouldn't see a character like Sumdac depicted in a positive light. Isaac Sumdac, through the lens of the show, is always shown in a very positive light. He is a humanitarian, like almost in a Hooverish sense. Isaac Sumdac really cares about people. He is not a military contractor. He does not build weapons. He's a pacifist.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can lock in the vote for Obama, like just right off the bat, because he's so rich. Like he definitely donates his money to a lot of like charities.
Yeah, he donates to environmental causes, human rights, famine. Like that's the kind of thing that concerns him. I had him written down as a capitalist, a classical sort of Adam Smith believes that the markets will produce good outcomes. And if he ever doubts it, he just has to look in the mirror because, here he is and Arnie, the Carnegie of his day. But I wouldn't object to a humanitarian label either. He does really care about his fellow man.
That's interesting because that sort of makes people like Powell and Prometheus Black like sort of like his like ideological like opposites, where they're like they're like the complete opposite of that. Like it's like these people can like they come up and they're evil.
I think that's the conceit of Prometheus Black as a character, is he's like the dark version of Isaac Sumdac in a lot of ways.
Maybe we should talk about Prometheus Black.
Yeah, might as well. I grouped Prometheus Black together with Colossus Rhodes because Colossus Rhodes is not important enough to talk about on his own.
Well, in terms of my various philosophies, he was an easy one. I think he's a very much a classical transhumanist. He believes in enhancing biology through technology. Very much like philosophically, and grouping Rhodes with him actually works really well because I don't think Rhodes is strongly philosophical, but in terms, by dint of the augmentation he has, he certainly would be an example of a transhumanist sort of archetype, not necessarily in terms of how he thinks, but in terms of what he does, what he is.
Prometheus Black is very, very against the robot revolution. Like he just believes in the human element of the technology. He thinks that the police bots just operating off of microchips are completely ineffective and you need the human mind at the center of it. At the same time, I think he is also a venture capitalist. Like, I think that Prometheus Black would have, like, Nestle factories pumping black smoke into the nearby lagoon and poisoning all of the fish, and he really wouldn't care that much at the same time.
Well, as much as Isaac Sumdac is a humanitarian, Black is not. When he's trying to build his version of a better future, it's for the few who can afford it.
I think that he's an easy McCain vote.
He might be a little worried about like some stem cell kind of stuff, but maybe not enough to bring himself to vote for Obama.
Let's jump to another Autobot, Bulkhead. I think that Bulkhead is probably liberal at heart. He's very tender, he's very caring. He believes in the value of humanity and friendship and teamwork, but I also feel like he could be prone to getting duped into voting against his best interests, especially in seasons 1 and 2. I feel like Bulkhead is a farmer, so that's probably at the top of his mind. I know he farms Energon, but if we're going with this kind of a human in 2008 worldview, that he would probably be concerned about, you know, agricultural restrictions and whatnot.
I mean, this is 2008, so both McCain and Obama would have had policy positions, white papers stating what their positions were, but it wasn't what was really motivating people to go to the polls, I don't think.
But I think he would be specifically concerned about it, even though it's not really a hot topic issue to most Americans.
Well, in terms of the McCain-Obama dynamic, I think farmers tended to like the vibe of McCain, and I could see Bulkhead going along with that. I do think Bulkhead is a vaguely left-leaning robot, and he might be fairly persuadable if somebody kind of knowledgeable about the specific issues of the day took the time to do some research and send him some links. He would probably be willing to click on it and read them, and that might sway him more towards Obama. In terms of his philosophy, I think what he believes in is sort of collectivism and collective action to make the world a better place. I think that's kind of the read we get from him in the show.
I think like the reason why they vote, Republican is mostly the aesthetic of republicanism, and I think Bulkhead just might be like in that crowd where he just he just goes along with what everyone else is voting for.
Unless Prowl sends him an email with some links in it.
In the context of the show, hanging out with Bumblebee and Optimus Prime and Ratchet, I think his immediate peers would mostly be Obama leaning, and if he's hanging out in the dilapidated structure, the auto base, then it would probably be more of an Obama vote.
I agree.
It's weird. He's a weird one because a lot of it just depends on what sort of assumptions you're making. If he's on Cybertron on the Energon one, then probably McCain.
But his day-to-day life is in Detroit in that automobile plant. So that's a good point.
I think if he's spending a decent amount of time with Prowl and Ratchet, for sure. And
next, we can jump to the Headmaster. And I was thinking, why don't we just call the Headmaster himself and ask him? Hey Masterson, I'm glad you picked up. I'm with some friends here.
Who is this?
It's me, Kian. We've talked before. So I'm with some friends here, and we were just curious, where do you lie on the political spectrum, if you don't mind us asking?
Well, who am I talking to? You like a sausage fest, or what's going on over there?
The total sausage fest over here, I fear.
Typical.
Let's put ourselves in the 2024 presidential election. Is there any candidate that you might be drawn towards, hypothetically?
I think they're all pretty lame, weak. Nobody's into my flavor of fascist feudalism with a side of what is it when people live at factories and I get to tell them what to do, and then they just buy everything from the company store. That's the kind of system I think that we should go back to.
Would you write your own name in?
Yeah, I think I should be running things. I'm a technocrat. I absolutely should be running things. That's what I was gonna say. Technocratic feudalism, fascism. That's the triumvirate that I'm at the head. I get to tell you what to do, and you live in my factory, and you just make cool things.
Thank you for your insight, Mr. Headmaster. It's been an honor to talk to you.
All right, Masterson out.
Bye. Next up, we're gonna go to Scrapper, Mixmaster, and Dirt Boss. I think that all of them were at January 6th because Dirt Boss convinced Mixmaster and Scrapper to go.
Or forced them to.
He may have forced them to with Cerebro. No, he told them, he's like, those globalists, they're hiding the oil in the capital. You cogs gotta get it. And they're like, oil?
I think Mixmaster and Scrapper are like the median voter. Like if left up to their own devices, they'll just vote for a different party every 4 years.
They're the type of people who would have swung from Obama in 2012 to Trump in 2016.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I see them as especially Dirt Boss. I see them very much aligning with the labor theory of value. I see them, again, to the extent that they have a philosophy, I see them being drawn to sort of Marx and those sort of texts.
Oh yeah, because Dirt Boss is talking about the man all the time.
I can see Dirt Boss, being like a Soviet Union type, like Marxist, because I feel like Dirt Boss himself, he has a very authoritarian personality, but like a lot of the things, written by Marx does like emphasize, democracy in some ways. He takes the parts that he likes from Marx, but then like he infuses like the later on like more like dictatorship-esque viewpoints of like the people that would run the Soviet Union. Like he would sort of mix those two together a little bit.
He would do well under Stalin, right? He believes the right things, but he also has the right attitude.
No, is Dirt Boss like a communist? Is that where we're going? Because that is like the opposite of what I thought about originally, but that actually makes infinitely more sense. I think Mixmaster and Scrapper are very much blue-collar worker, but Dirt Boss is something else. He's like mob boss mixed with communist.
There's like, communists, and there's like Soviet communists. I think those are two very, very different things. So I do think that he would be like more like a Soviet-era communist.
Who do Mixmaster, Scrapper, and Dirt Boss vote for in the 2008 presidential election?
It might depend on like the fossil fuel lobby, I'm
going to say McCain. I think the oil issue might be persuasive to them. I don't think either candidate is a strong ideological fix, but people are more than one thing.
McCain makes more sense because he probably receives more money from the fossil fuel lobby. So
we can chalk up 3 votes, 3 more to McCain. I think McCain's going to take this thing.
Next, we're going to go to the S.U.V. plus Master Disaster, who we just kind of tacked on because we don't care about him.
Well, in terms of philosophy, Machiavellianism, the ends justify the means. I don't think they are strongly ideological, but I think they are more than willing to flout the conventions of society to get what they want, including Master Disaster.
I think Professor Princess in particular has like a hint of an ideology in there because of how she wants to destroy like all boys' toys and stuff. Like super like radical, like misandrist sort of, like that sort of immature, like very like manifestation of feminism there.
It's clearly not an overriding philosophy because she's more than happy to work with Angry Archer and Nanosec and whatnot.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend, as she famously says.
It would be funny if she voted for Jill Stein.
I think that Professor Princess might be enticed by Sarah Palin and cast her vote for McCain. It's interesting about the Angry Archer is like he's drawing on the Robin Hood folklore, but he's the exact opposite in his beliefs and his value set. Because like Robin Hood is like literally steal from the rich, give to the poor, but the Angry Archer is just stealing to the rich and giving to himself. Like he's masquerading the Robin Hood philosophy, but he doesn't actually believe in it.
I mean, I think he also steals from the poor.
Yeah, that's true. He steals from Wreck-Gar.
What about Nanosec? Are we going to do the same thing for Blurr?
Nanosec is like an incel who spends his time on 4chan complaining that he can't get a girlfriend. Although he does have Riz with Slow-Mo apparently, so actually I retract my criticism.
Pre-Slow-Mo, he was an incel. He met Slow-Mo and then he became woke.
Is Professor Princess old enough to vote?
No.
So she can't. Okay, great. I retract that. Professor Princess does not get to cast a vote, and the other 4 all vote for McCain.
I feel like Nanosec might vote for Obama.
I feel like that would be against his best interest.
Yeah, but does he strike you as a deep thinker?
No, he doesn't.
I feel like the vibes are better for Obama.
Yeah, that's fair. Maybe Slow-Mo would do the same.
I can see Angry Archer voting for Obama because just the perception that like it's going to help him out more. You know, he wants someone who's not going to be like cracking down on crime. Maybe 3 Obama and 2 McCain, because I feel like Slow-Mo, she strikes me as conservative for whatever reason.
She was like slaving away in a factory, and she really wants to like blow the system up. I think Slow-Mo would go for Obama. That's my.
We got 4 Obama and 1 McCain.
Yeah, I think Master Disaster is McCain. I think that the S.U.V may be turning the tables in Obama's favor single-handedly. Now we have Lugnut. Lugnut isn't so much driven by loyalty to his party, but he's loyal to Megatron. For Lugnut, his Decepticon allegiance is formed around a cult of personality and not any specific strong ideology. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely.
Whoever Megatron supports.
Well, Megatron doesn't support anyone, so I think Lugnut would write in Megatron or he wouldn't vote.
You could call his philosophy Megatronism if you were so inclined. That really is what's driving him. If you want to go with an existing philosophy on Earth, I think authoritarianism, right? You know, he rather than wanting a tyrant, he wants a strong leader to tell him what to do. And in this case, it happens to be Megatron. And we know from season 4 plans that that is something that might shift.
This is like a random thought, but I like the question sometimes that if Megatron did become Galvatron, if Lugnut would still like him.
Next, we have Blackarachnia.
It's kind of difficult to pinpoint because she doesn't have like much of like a bigger picture view of things. It's very like narrow and focused on her own past, so it's kind of difficult to pinpoint exactly what she would vote for. She's
very willingly complicit in the Decepticon regime. You know, she's not objecting.
I get the impression that she would just go along with anything as long as it, you know, gets her closer to her cure, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You kind of have to question, like, is Obama or McCain gonna help her get the cure? So,
I feel like Obama would be more technologically advantageous, and if she's really thinking in terms of that, she might go with Obama. McCain was less pro science, less pro technology.
Well, we'll give this to Obama.
I think Obama. That is the funniest question you've ever raised. Is who would Obama or McCain help her find the cure more?
That should be the video's thumbnail. There should be like Transformers animated Obama. And then there should be like, could he find a cure? It is in Blackarachnia there.
I think her philosophy is realism. The idea that morality isn't really a factor one way or the other, and that, you know, you're going to ally yourself with the states that are going to be most advantageous to you. States are going to act in their own self-interest. So I see her willingness to work with the Decepticons in that vein of realism.
Next, we're going to jump to Soundwave, and I'm grouping Laserbeak and Ratbat in with him, because I think they're programmed to just believe whatever he believes. But I believe that all of them can vote. He programmed them with the right to vote, actually. I think that Soundwave wants to start a cultural revolution and topple the current hierarchy. He is not content with simply freeing the oppressed. He wants to enslave the oppressors, or who he perceives to be the oppressors. He's a political anomaly, because he's looking out for this minority class who's being subjugated under the current system, but he also wants like very authoritarian consequences for those who he views as the problem. So it's kind of interesting.
I see him as a technocrat, you know, and I didn't have any like that was very obvious to me. He very much believes in the supremacy of technology and those who advance technological interests, and probably would be an Obama voter if he thought that mattered, because I think, again, Obama would be the more pro-technology candidate.
He would kind of hate them anyway because they're humans.
Yeah, I think Soundwave would just like brainwash everyone in Washington, D.C. and then walk them off a cliff instead of voting in the election.
I could see him like hatching a plot to like brainwash just the Electoral College. You know, and like there's an election, and then like there's like 300 votes from Megatron, and it's like, wait, what?
He's not voting. He's going to both brainwash Obama and McCain and kind of puppeteer their campaigns from behind them.
No, don't blame me. I voted for Kodos.
Sari Sumdac. I think that she is a young, fierce progressive. I think that Sari Sumdac, if anyone in the cast of Transformers Animated is dark woke, it's Sari Sumdac.
Dark woke. Oh yeah, definitely Obama, but
definitely Obama.
If there was a more radical option, she would go there too.
Shockwave. I think that Shockwave, probably very similar to Megatron, but I also do think he's legitimately loyal to Megatron and not as concerned with self-advancement. I think that he does subscribe to the actual philosophy of Megatron, which I assume in the world of animated is the strongest shall rule, and he also recognizes Megatron as being the strongest, but not in an obsessive cult-like way like Lugnut does, because I think he's a lot smarter than Lugnut. And I think Shockwave has thought about his philosophy a lot more than Lugnut has.
I had his philosophy down as oligarch. He believes by the rule of the very few of whom he would be one. So he would acknowledge Megatron as being on top, but he would see himself correctly as being in the inner circle.
I don't think he's like obsessively writing in Megatron the way Lugnut did. I could see Shockwave actually voting.
I just see him skipping. I think, he would say the probability that I have any impact on the election is very low. I don't care that much. The candidates aren't that much different from my interests. So yeah, I see him staying home.
That makes sense. Next up is Wreck-Gar. Wreck-Gar seems low income, so he was likely affected by the recent snap cuts. I think that Wreck-Gar will be swayed by whoever the most recent party he spoke to is. The way Mixmaster and Scrapper might switch parties every 4 years, he'll switch parties every 4 minutes. Imagine it's like garbage in, garbage out. He sees a Democratic Party door-to-door campaigner, and he says, "Wow, I'm convinced!" And then he stumbles into the Republican National Convention happening in Detroit, and he hears one singular speech, and he says, "Wow, I hate immigrants!"
He just becomes evil. He puts on the Republican insignia, like the Decepticon insignia.
The elephant on his chest. He just has a MAGA hat in his dumpster. And
Yeah. He is the classical example of a trivialist. Trivialism being the philosophy that all statements are true, including the contradictory ones. Would vote because someone would say, you have to vote, vote or die.
I got mail for the last election that was like, cast your vote or lose it. And Wreck-Gar would get that mail and he's like, wow, okay. And then he would. And it's just whoever he talked to most recently is who he cast his vote for. So that might be a 0.5.
0.5, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what we got to do. Jazz. I think Jazz is definitely like a calm liberal. I think that he takes the time to think about everything, but he's not very vocal about his political beliefs. I think he keeps it internalized, but passionately votes.
Well, for sure, because he works with Ultra Magnus and Sentinel, so...
Oh yeah, that's why he doesn't say it.
Yeah, I have him down as a classical liberal.
Omega Supreme.
I think he will vote for whoever Ratchet's voting for.
I think that Omega Supreme wouldn't fit inside the voting booth.
No, he'd have to do like a mail-in.
He has to do a mail-in ballot.
Yeah, because he's transwarping around, In terms of his philosophy, like I had to go thinking about it and researching, but I think the one that fits the most in terms of what we see diegetically on the screen is paternalism, right? He believes that the authority figures in his life have his best interests at heart, whether or not that's true.
What if his name was Obama Supreme and Obama's face was in the glass?
That's the thumbnail.
This is the final character we have to discuss today, Optimus Prime. I feel like Optimus Prime would be very calm and deliberate, and he would probably be the last of the main 5 to pick a side, because he would want to do his thorough, meticulous research before each and every election, and he would always repeat from scratch in the next election.
Not just the main candidates, like the bond measures, the full board.
Yes, and I think after careful consideration, Optimus Prime would probably vote for Obama in 2008.
I feel like Optimus kind of goes through like a political journey throughout the show. When he's in the academy, he sort of, he believes, everything's all right. Even when he's with his crew, he believes like in the cog and the great big Autobot machine and stuff like that. So I feel like as time goes on, he starts to see like flaws and stuff, and like maybe his outlook changes. I do think, to lock in for Obama though, but I do feel like his viewpoint in the show is very like, it's changed, quite a bit by the end of it.
I think he also would become a reformer. I mean, we know that Autobot society in animated is broken in many ways, and Optimus is capable of seeing that and taking steps to make it better. And I feel like parts of season 4 probably would have addressed that at least a little bit, insofar as trying to demonstrate why Sentinel being in charge is a bad thing.
I've also been thinking about Optimus, like in terms of understanding human social issues, because in episode 3, Sari tries to explain just the basic concept of sex to him, and he can barely comprehend it. In terms of like the modern kind of social issues that are, being discussed in modern politics, if you were to like try to explain gender reassignment surgery to Optimus Prime, he really probably wouldn't get it. I think Sari would be sitting there, walking him through what it is, and he would just say, well, as long as they're happy, Sari. You know, that's all he really cares about. As long as people are content with themselves at the end of the day, he's proud of them. He would vote for, you know, the right thing to do, but he wouldn't fully understand it, in my opinion.
I think that Optimus Prime in 2008 America would characterize himself incorrectly as a centrist. I think that's the word he would use, and I think he would be wrong. And I don't think he would call himself that in 2024. I think the connotations have changed. But I think he would aspire to it because in 2008, because it would have a sense that he's not trying to tilt one way or the other, and both sides have
he
have
values
value.
compromise. He values compromise, stuff like that.
But I think his actual philosophy, I think he is an idealist. I think that is the term that would be most accurate for what he really would be, not one he would necessarily use himself.
Let me do the final tally.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Who
Let's
won?
see who won the election. 13.16 votes for John McCain, and Obama gets 16.5 votes.
There we go. Okay.
That's crazy. McCain was winning the beginning, and then it kind of swung around in the back end.
It was the S.U.V. that kind of...
Yeah, literally, they were the swing voters. So that's the message of this video, is that your vote can matter if you're a human supervillain.
Yeah. Well, and the irony is all the people that stayed home in this election because their vote didn't count, man, they could have carried it. They only needed to get 3 1/16 of a vote.
I think what's interesting about how this show is kind of framed, I just want to have this conversation to wrap it up. It's like a very kind of right-wing overarching government body, and Optimus Prime and his team kind of operate independently of it. And if you look at episodes like Mission Accomplished, that is basically showing how Optimus's team is completely competent, well-oiled, and they work really well together, and the Elite Guard is bumbling and ineffective. Like on the DVD commentary for Mission Accomplished, Marty says that's like the point of the episode, is showcasing that. I think that Transformers Animated as a whole kind of believes in like the value of the individual over the governing body. I've had a conversation with Marty one time, and I asked him, I was like, Marty's been on record as saying he does not ever want Optimus to become Magnus. And I kind of asked him as a fan, I was like, why not? I think that would be like a natural endpoint for the show as he steps up as leader. And Marty said one thing. First of all, he said, that's the point, is that if Optimus becomes leader of Cybertron, that's the end of the show. Marty is very much a the adventure continues perpetually type of writer. He doesn't like definitive endings. But he also said to me that if Optimus were to step up and be the leader of Cybertron, it would not be as Magnus, it would be as Optimus Prime. Because the title of Magnus is tainted. The Elite Guard is very intentionally this corrupt, decrepit organization, and it's not Optimus's job to fix that broken system. And I think that's like the message of the series as a whole. It's like the value of the individual is superior to the overarching governmental system. And it's almost like, I'm not gonna say like anarchical, but it's borderline anarchical in its messaging. It speaks to the quality of Animated that there is such a variety of political viewpoints that we could assign all of these characters. There's so much variety is the word that I would use.
Even down to like the characters that you don't care that much about in the grand scheme, like Meltdown. Like look at how far we got talking about Meltdown of all characters. Mm-hmm. Like Kean doesn't even like Meltdown. Like look at how long we talked about him.
I like Meltdown a lot. You don't like Meltdown?
No, I thought he was mid as a kid. I feel like I like him slightly more than Colossus Rhodes, though.
Slightly more, only a little
Colossus
bit.
Rhodes is barely a character, right? I mean, he's an obstacle to be faced. As you say, it speaks to the variety of viewpoints in the present. And it's not like all the, sort of bad philosophies or Decepticons and all the good philosophies are Autobots. I mean, certainly, the Autobots have their fair share of stinkers in here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like how you subverted Kean's expectation for a dirt boss there.
All right, everyone. That's me, the YouTuber Kean Carlisle from the internet, signing off of this video. Goodbye, everyone.